Let's head straight into our top story. Amid heightened tensions between India and China along the line of actual control, India has exposed China's lies yet again. While China had earlier claimed that India fired warning shots along the LAC, the Indian army has now denied these reports in a statement. It has said that the Chinese troops advanced towards the Indian territory and they were the ones who fired shots into the air to intimidate their own soldiers. Now, while India continues to be committed to disengagement and de-escalation at the border, China, it seems, continues to undertake provocative activities to escalate the situation. This is what the Indian Army has stated, that at no stage did the Indian Army transgress across the LAC or resort to use of any aggressive means, including any firing of shots. Now, earlier, the Chinese Ministry of Defense put out a statement saying that shots were fired in the presence of the Indian Army and the People's Liberation Army. This development comes days after the Indian and Chinese defense ministers met in Moscow. The diplomatic and military level talks between the two sides have failed to yield any results. And recently, India outflanked China by taking control of strategic heights near Pangong Lake's southern bank. It also thwarted an attempt by the Chinese army to enter into Indian areas near the southern bank of Pangong So in Ladakh. Now, for more updates on this developing story, WION's principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal is joining us live. Siddhant, thanks for joining us. Now, the Indian Army has made a strong statement and it clearly states that while India is committed to disengagement, the Chinese side continues to undertake provocative activities. So tell us more about this.
Well, yes, a strong rebuttal on expected lines by the Indian Army has been issued on the developments which happened on Monday between around 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. We know that the Chinese Army had come out with a midnight statement on the development, but now a rebuttal talking about how it was the Chinese Army that indulged in action, provocative actions, and these actions including firing shots. For perhaps the first time, shots have been fired in more than 40 years at the line of actual control. So clearly, situation really dangerous. We know that the statement, which was issued just 15 minutes ago, also dismisses the misleading claim. That's the word used by the Indian Army statement by the Chinese Army. The detailed statement details how the Chinese Army tried to come in a location, and of course, the attempt was thwarted again. This, of course, is the second major public incident which has been acknowledged by both sides after the Galwan incident in June. Then, of course, how the Indian Army was able to thwart the Chinese Army in the southern bank of the Pangong Lake, and now this development coming amidst diplomatic engagement. In fact, the Indian Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has left for Russia, where he is expected to meet the Chinese counterpart, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi.
Right. Now, a very important part of the Indian Army's statement, which says that at no stage did the Indian Army transgress across the LAC or, in fact, resort to any use of aggressive means, including firing. And India has made its stand very clear on the matter. So do we expect the Chinese government to respond, especially since India's foreign minister is headed to Moscow as we speak?
Well, in a short while from now, around 12:30 Indian Standard Time, the Chinese Foreign Ministry will be briefing. That's a daily briefing that takes place, and provocative comments are coming from the Chinese Foreign Ministry as well. In fact, yesterday only the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that they do not recognize India's state of Arunachal Pradesh and called it South Tibet, something that is very provocative. We do expect a reaction as well on that development as well, but largely do expect a reaction by the Chinese side. And of course, this is a part of a larger information warfare as well by the Chinese as well. We know that the Chinese state media, how it has been bringing out a very biased sort of commentary on India. In fact, so much so that they are not even carrying the statement by the Indian mission many times. In fact, that was something that the Indian mission itself brought into light, highlighted how there was a statement by the Pakistani envoy to China, but not by the Indian envoy to China. So a lot of developments happening, conversations happening. By and large, we have seen India calling the situation as very serious. Only yesterday, Indian Foreign Minister called the situation serious, and before that, the Foreign Secretary called it very challenging.
Right. All right, Siddhant, thank you so much for joining us. We'll come back to you for more as the story develops. Joining us now is Brahma Chelani, the Professor of Strategic Studies at the Center for Policy Research, who's joining us live right now from New Delhi. Mr. Chelani, thank you so much for joining us. Now, another sign of escalation at the border, and the Indian Army, in fact, has now made a strong statement where it has clearly said that while the Indian Army is committed to disengagement, the Chinese side continues to undertake provocative actions. So tell us more. What is your view on the matter?
It's good that the Indian Army has finally issued a statement, because for several hours the international media was carrying the Chinese version,
right,
and there was no Indian version that the international audience was hearing or reading. It's very important in a military situation of this kind that the Indian government issues a statement quickly in response to any Chinese claim or any Chinese statement. Having said that, this may not be the first instance of shots being fired in the current Himalayan standoff. All the details of previous confrontations between troops have not been revealed, and there is speculation that an earlier gunfire exchange resulted in casualties. But the latest clash, no doubt, underscores the increasingly serious situation along the border and the growing risks of armed conflict.
Right.
Also, the timing of this particular episode is significant because it comes in the run-up to the foreign ministers' meeting in Moscow, where India and China are likely to discuss ways to defuse the situation. That meeting between Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart is a significant meeting because China and India are both looking at ways they can de-escalate the increasingly tense situation. But both sides are also jostling to strengthen their positions in the run-up to that meeting. And the Chinese clearly attempted to dislodge the Indians from one position on the southern side of Pangong Lake, and that's how the latest confrontation happened.
Right. Now, Mr. Chilani, there's also a lot of back and forth happening between the two foreign ministries of the two countries as well as the armies. And the Indian Army has made it very clear that at no stage did the Army, in fact, transgress across the LAC or resort to any use of aggressive means, including firing, which is a strong rebuttal to China's claims. So how do we see diplomatic level talks panning out, especially as India's foreign minister is headed to meet his Chinese counterpart in Russia?
There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation that India has to counter. As the Indian Army statement underlines, the statement that was issued earlier by the Western Theatre Command of the PLA was an attempt to mislead both the domestic constituency in China as well as the international community. So they deliberately engaged in distortion and untruths, and painted a picture that was completely at variance with what happened. And I think that's one factor that that weighs on the current tensions. As far as the two foreign ministries are concerned, the foreign ministry in China is the weakest department of the government. The defense ministry and the Politburo and the people who are in the leadership positions of the party call the shots.
Right.
The foreign ministry is quite weak. By contrast, the Indian foreign ministry, the external affairs ministry, is fully in charge of negotiations, of finding a way to diffuse the current crisis. So there is a mismatch between the roles and the power of the two foreign ministries.
Right.
But I think there's one other point that I wish to underscore, that in a lot of commentators are going to say that this is the first case where shots have been fired, and that the fact that the first shots have been fired, or at least the first shots have been admitted to have been fired, that this marks an escalation. I would like to just remind everyone that even without firing a single shot, China has waged a bulletless war for territory along its border with India, and bite by bite, China has been eating away at India's borderlands over many years.
Right.
If you look at this year's aggression, this year too, in April and May, China managed to muscle its way into Indian territories without firing a single shot.
Right.
So the latest firing incident should not obscure that reality.
Now, Mr. Chilani, just wrapping up our discussion here, my final question. At a time when the entire world is focused on a health crisis and curtailing it, we're seeing the rise of an expansionist and a very aggressive China. So how does India deal with this new aggressive China going forward?
China's expansionism seeks to capitalize on the global preoccupation with the Wuhan originating pandemic.
Right.
The pandemic which China has exported to the world has come handy to President Xi Jinping in pursuit of his aggressive expansionism. For example, they encroached on Indian territories in late April, early May, when India was distracted and vulnerable. India had enforced the world's strictest lockdown, and India was caught off guard by the Chinese aggression. So they are trying to fully utilize this opportunity to wage aggression. For example, even the Hong Kong issue, how they managed to change the status quo in relation to Hong Kong by utilizing the global preoccupation with the pandemic, or their moves currently in the East China Sea, where they have increased the number of incursions into Japanese waters of the Senkaku Islands. All this underscores Xi Jinping's expansionism drive, and that expansionism drive is increasingly destabilizing the Indo-Pacific region.
Right. Mr. Chilani, I just request you to stay with us as we take a short break, and we'll continue our coverage of this news development between the relations of India and China. Let's take a short break now. We'll be back.